Hello my friends, this is Brian from Nerdword Entertainment. Well, here we are. We finally reached the end of what has got to be the most important year in recent memory for the Sonic the Hedgehog series. This year we were promised a proper and extravagant return to form for both pre-established branches of the Sonic franchise. After a nearly 4-year hiatus and a couple of lousy spin-offs, Sonic is back, and it seems like he's not doing half bad. As you all know, Sonic Mania turned out to be something truly special. This retro-style throwback was a labor of love that resulted in a well-designed, replayable good time that absolutely nailed the classic Sonic aesthetic. I personally wasn't as big a fan of the game as many others were, mainly due to the game's insistence on recycling ideas and locations from the series past, but the game was certainly fun enough for me to consider it a success. On Sonic Team's end, however, the very identity of Sonic Forces has been in question as early as the game's announcement, and I gotta say, the build-up toward this one has not been pretty. Following the controversial reintroduction of classic Sonic, each new reveal, interview, and demonstration would result in the now divided Sonic fanbase falling deeper and deeper into inescapable depression and confusion. This went on for months in advance in what I can only describe as the Sonic fanbase civil war. People died. It was tragic. In the 4 years it had been since Sonic Team's last major release, a lot had certainly changed in this fandom, and the PR was not helping matters. This is going to go down in history for me as the worst pre-release period in Sonic history. I hated the last 6 months leading up to this game. What sealed the deal was an abysmally handled Japanese public demo, a lack of proper review copies, a discounted price, and a broken street date that resulted in catastrophic amounts of leaks. At this point, regardless of how the final product would actually turn out, the release date would not be one of celebration, but of harsh reality. Sonic Forces was all but dead on arrival. But hey, now that the game's out, we might as well talk about it. I'll go ahead and preface this review by saying I like the game overall. I think it's got plenty of strong points, but its downsides are almost impossible to swallow. There's a lot to talk about here, but before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's take it from the top. Sonic Forces, in a surprising turn of events, has one of the most entertaining stories in the entire series. Writers Ken Pontac and Warren Graff returned for the game's English script, and while they're not preferable, they do provide their best work for the Sonic series to date. The game's plot revolves around the idea of what would happen if Dr. Eggman were to put Sonic out of commission and finally achieve his plans of taking over the world. His conquest doesn't take too long, now that he's somehow got access to what I'm assuming is that same pink MacGuffin stone from Sonic Mania, the Phantom Ruby. Eggman has used this stone to supercharge his new most powerful minion, a demonic jackal known as Infinite. With Sonic gone and Tails missing, it's up to Knuckles and the gang to build an army to fight back against Eggman. This army of course includes you, the player, personified as your very own customizable character. The story is told at an exhilarating pace, with fantastic moments that blend dialogue and action in a way I've only been dreaming of for years now. These are, in my opinion, the most impressive cutscenes in any Sonic game, even beating out the ones in Unleashed and Adventure 2. Don't get me wrong, the story itself doesn't stack up to those two, but the production values certainly exceed them. In addition to some great direction and cinematography, Sonic Forces does a stellar job with its character animation, better than I've seen in any other Sonic Team game. This is the best that modern Sonic himself has been in any game not written by Shiro Maikawa. His movements are on point, his writing is legitimately funny, and his voice portrayal by Roger Craig Smith is solid for once. Other characters like Knuckles and Silver also get brief moments to shine, and it's great to see all of Sonic's friends involved in some way. I just wish we could have had the chance to see them do more here, other than just hang around at Chemical Plant's resistance camp. Maybe next time. Now, one of the greatest mysteries this game presented was just how certain characters and villains were brought in, both on Eggman's side and on the Resistance. Well, I'm here to tell you right now that it's all BS and these characters only exist to boost the game's marketing. Classic Sonic just appears because the Phantom Ruby contrived him into the plot, and the other characters just accept him without a second thought, further confirming that Sonic Generations is indeed canon. It's even implied that he may be returning in future modern Sonic games too. Please, for the love of God, no. As for the returning villains, they're just virtual creations by Eggman and Infinite. The real Shadow kicks the crap out of the fake one, Metal Sonic is redundant because he's a robot, no one ever cared about Zavok, and Chaos is given absolutely nothing. Not even a boss fight for the poor guy. Sadly, the issues don't stop there. The character of Infinite, while extremely cool and well designed on the surface, is sadly squandered of most of his potential, and gets jobbed so hard out of this game's climax that he's never able to live up to his name and leave a proper impact. Guess that's what the DLC and prequel comics are for. I would say Sonic Force's story is more fun and well presented than it is fundamentally good. Despite its premise, the story is a lot goofier than you might think, and it's honestly pretty shallow. Of course there are issues with Infinite and classic Sonic, but the whole Dr. Eggman conquers 99.9% of the world gimmick always came across as parody. Eggman is never portrayed as a huge threat in my eyes, and there's not enough character drama between Sonic and the gang to really feel like there are any stakes. What doesn't help is the plot rushes through its own story beats entirely too fast at times, and the ending of this game is diarrheaed out so badly that it nearly soured the entire experience for me. That post-credit scene couldn't have come soon enough. But hey, despite a few painful bumps, the game's presentation as a whole is stellar. Even the levels themselves integrate storytelling in the form of short cutscenes and quick-time events that keep the action intense and exciting. It's got the feel of an interactive theme park ride, which, while a tad shallow, can provide plenty of thrills and spectacle throughout your first playthrough. In addition to the boost in production, the levels themselves offer a varying degree of fun. Of course, our four main options here are Sonic, Classic, Rookie, and a tag team of both Sonic and Rookie. Each of the game's 7 major locations has its own level set aside for all 4 of these playstyles, in most cases. Including boss fights, it all adds up to about 30 levels to play. Sonic's levels are the highlight, pretty sure we all saw that coming. I've heard plenty of folks disagree, but I personally think Sonic controls rather well. He maintains some of his tighter movement from Lost World, so it's easier to run around freely in 3D space. When he's boosting, he even has a new and improved jump dash, which can often be used to gain some sick air and even reach a few shortcuts if you're creative. This is, for my money, the most fun thing to do in this game. However, we're still given plenty of side-scrolling sections with blocky, precise platforming that everyone wished could have disappeared after Sonic Colors. I'd say that if we have to have these, at least they're better than they were previously. Unleashed is still the one that did it best, but of course we'd rather not have these at all. It's obvious by now that they only exist as a result of limitations in the game's design. When you've got a character that can move this fast, you've got to have some big levels to compensate, and Sonic Team can only do so much. Funny thing is, these levels are still extremely short, averaging in at about 2 minutes each. I think that's a welcome change of pace, but I just wish that there were more levels in that case. There's also lots of automation to keep the player on track, but there's shockingly not as much of it as you might think. It can be a little inconsistent, honestly. It's almost like Sonic Team heard all of the complaints about the game holding the player's hand too much, and so there are points when they just decide to yank the training wheels off mid-session. I would think this is a pretty big reason why the game is accused of having bad controls, but I would see it as further proof that this playstyle just doesn't hold up without tons of automation, meaning that what we're dealing with here is fundamentally flawed. It's still fun, in fact it's more fun overall than Colors, but I think Sonic has hit a dead end with this formula, and should probably move on to something else before it's too late. As for the custom hero, they play very much like Sonic, only without a boost. Instead, he or she has access to the Wisp-On, which gives new meaning to the returning Wisp power-ups by giving the player new ways to fight enemies and traverse the stage. I'm sure this was meant to be the game's main source of replay value, but the thing is, these levels just aren't complex enough to feel like they're worth it. Actually getting the chance to customize your character is the real fun part here. Beating levels and completing certain challenges will give you access to more and more clothes and accessories for you to add on at any time and make your persona feel more and more like your own. It's a fun time that can make even the older, more cynical fans like myself feel a brief sense of childlike innocence. There's not really much to say on the cooperative levels. Basically, Sonic and Rookie's full movesets are usable simultaneously, and that's pretty cool, but sadly I feel these levels were an afterthought, and thus they just aren't very fun to play. They are the most open of the bunch, but they are also still the least focused. I did like the final co-op stage though. Boosting my way out of the Shadow Realm is always fun. And then we have Classic Sonic. What in the world happened? I don't know if this has something to do with the new engine, but he just controls terribly. He works fine in the 2 boss fights he has, but his levels are such a slog each and every time. How do you downgrade this hard from Sonic Generations? He was never perfect, but he worked just fine in that game. Better yet, why not consult Christian Whitehead from the Mania team to help you fine-tune his controls and physics? This is borderline Sonic 4 levels of bad. Add all this onto the fact that he has no business in this game's story, and classic Sonic is just as much of a disaster as something like the Hedgehog from Sonic Unleashed. What a disgrace. Easily the worst thing in this game, and the sad part is, we all saw that coming from the moment the game was announced. On that note, the boss fights all suck. Not only are there barely any of them, but they offer next to no depth or challenge. They're mostly a demoted take on the usual run after the boss until you catch and attack them deal from Unleashed in Colors, with a few side-scrolling ones thrown in. There's a pretty decent boss against Infinite with a custom hero, as it actually does manage to test your skill, but the others do not stand out. And finally, in true modern Sonic fashion, the final boss is horrendous. This has got to be one of the worst finales in any Sonic game, just barely staying above the irredeemable slogfest that was Sonic Generations climax. It's essentially the final boss from Colors, but with about half of the challenge and depth of the Eggman battle from Sonic Lost World. I don't know what the deal is with final bosses in Sonic games, man. Are they really that difficult to get right? It's like they always stand out as that one last brutal reminder of the unfocused, inconsistent design of 3D Sonic in general. On a more positive note, the soundtrack's good. Sonic Force's soundtrack has seemingly been the point of controversy, and while I do agree that the more focused instruments of the Sonic Adventure games are a better fit, and the composer Tomoya Otani has done much better work in the past, I'd still call this as a whole rather solid. I'll admit that it's a bit uninspired and lacks focus, but what works works, and I'm especially fond of Rookie's completely lyrical track list. Standouts include Spaceport, Park Avenue, and Aqua Road. I also dig modern Sonic's level themes, which invoke the more technological feeling of Sonic Colors, and the other primary lyrical songs like Fist Bump and Infinite's theme are some of the cheesiest things to come out of this series, but as always, they're good, edgy fun, and I love that. I don't know what the deal was with that ending theme though. I can't for the life of me remember what it sounds like. Moving on, I'm sure it's obvious by now, but Sonic Team has almost never made a bad-looking game. Sonic Forces once again lives up to expectations and provides some beautifully colorful worlds, which add in a touch of cohesion and sophistication this time. The world of Sonic Forces actually feels unified, which is more than I can say for the other 3D games in the series. My only issue is just how much it feels like the game takes place in a completely different world than Sonic's other recent outings. Why aren't there any humans in Sonic's world anymore? I'm glad to see more anthropomorphic characters, but at least allow them to blend in with the previously established civilians from Sonic Unleashed. When will Sonic Team finally build a properly established world for Sonic to live in? It's been over 25 years and we still may never know the answer. Replay value in Forces is mostly artificial. The player is encouraged to go back and collect different types of rings found in each level, which unlock extra challenges and even more gear for your avatar, I think. As of this review, it hasn't been clearly established what collecting everything does for you, but it has been confirmed that Super Sonic is on the way via a software patch. Also available through DLC is the first playable appearance of Shadow the Hedgehog in over a decade. In addition to his own short story mode campaign, Shadow is playable in nearly every one of Sonic's stages. I am incredibly happy about this. It's my favorite bit of fan service in this game, to be honest. Hopefully this opens the door for even more playable characters in 3D Sonic going forward. Still waiting for my girl Amy. So yeah, all in all, there are some lousy things in this game, but Sonic Forces is actually pretty okay. I wouldn't call this game great or even exceptionally good, but it's certainly enjoyable. My first playthrough had me grinning from ear to ear most of the time, because the game's primary intention is to take the player on a fan service-fueled thrill ride. It does that pretty well, even if it may lead to a lack of lasting appeal. This game is way better than Sonic Lost World, and I'd even say it surpasses Colors. It's not even that far behind Unleashed if I'm being honest. Generations is still the best of the bunch, and of course nothing tops the adventure games for me. Finally, out of all of Sonic's releases in 2017 specifically, yes, Sonic Mania is the better of the two games. So that's it, right? We can all accept Sonic Forces as a highly flawed but still average game that expands upon Sonic's 3D career? No? Yeah, no, of course not. It really isn't that simple. As fine as this game is on its own, when you really take a step back and look at everything in context, Sonic Forces is a massive failure. No matter its merits, Sonic Forces, as it stands, was in development for 4 years, and a lot can happen in that amount of time. During Sonic Team's relative silence, a new spin-off series was released and tanked Sonic's reputation in the most intense manner we had seen since Sonic 06. Sonic Team's previous game, Sonic Lost World, had already stirred controversy for the company. A new mainline Sonic mobile game was released and was then discontinued due to poor returns. The long-running Sonic comic series by Archie was cancelled. Adding on to all of this, younger fans of Sonic's 3D outings were growing older, and their interests were shifting. Games in the series that were once praised now had plenty of time to become subject to a higher level of scrutiny. And finally, the Sonic game that would bring the character back in a grander fashion than we ever could have expected came from an independent studio, not Sonic Team. By the time Sonic Team actually did have something to show, of course it wouldn't live up to expectations. After this many years, a by-the-numbers follow-up to Sonic Generations simply doesn't make the cut. The fans' hearts were just not invested in this one, and I would argue that Sonic Teams weren't either. This just doesn't seem like the kind of game that they wanted to make. It was obvious from the beginning that Sonic Forces may as well have been a checklist made strictly to please the fans, with no real unifying goal or ambition. What other reason would there have been to randomly insert classic Sonic? And on that note, why does this game consist of Sonic, and a random avatar that isn't Sonic? There's no balance here, no rhyme or reason to the game's structure, and it leads me to believe that Sonic Forces suffered through development hell. A game like this simply does not take 4 years to make, unless there are some serious issues behind the scenes. I like to believe that this was originally a very different game, one that may have incorporated a third Sonic from the Sonic Boom universe. Together with classic Sonic, I feel like that would thematically work better, and that grappling hook? Sure looks like it could have been an Enter Beam. But it's clear to see that the negative reception to the Boom spin-off would lead Sonic Team to reconsider, and drastically lengthen the production cycle of the game. Maybe the story just wasn't coming together. Maybe the team felt so obligated to reiterate on Sonic Generations and Colors, but simply couldn't come up with any valuable ideas after such a drastic change in perspective with Lost World. Also keep in mind that they were working with new hardware and a new engine. The game's development was likely horribly inefficient, and just like with every other Sonic game, sacrifices had to be made in order to meet deadlines. I imagine that somewhere along the line, perhaps even early on, Sonic Forces was destined to be a vanity project. I see Sonic Forces' final product as the result of compromises, not passion. And of course that's so easy to see when taking Sonic Mania into account, which was created in just over 19 months and was obviously made with the utmost care and efficiency. Having these games both released in the same year has done way more bad than good for Force's reputation, and while I must say I'm incredibly annoyed with the fan base's response to both games, I'll admit that I totally understand it. Sonic Forces, well before its release, and especially after, had become the manifestation of an unfocused, confused brand that spoke volumes about its fan following, and especially its primary developer, Sonic Team. I simply don't believe this group is suitable to create this series of games anymore, at least not as they stand now. It's clear that they're exhausted, and would rather move on to other projects. It would also seem as though producer Takashi Iizuka may need to hand over his leadership position to someone new, someone who can propel the team forward with new ways of thinking. Meanwhile, I'm sure there are developers out there, big and small, that can do some truly great things with the franchise. Modern Sonic is one of the last surviving 3D platformers in the gaming industry, and I want to see him stay alive, but if that's ever going to happen, then the team responsible should do some serious restructuring, and maybe even seek outside help. I would personally love to see Sonic Team's artists collaborate with other companies, possibly even in the West, to re-establish 3D Sonic, and make it into something that can work beyond its own niche of fans and into the mainstream. It would be fantastic to see fresh talent provide their insight into the game's design, while Sonic Team continues to provide the amazing artwork and visual development that they've always excelled with. Whether it's with a firmly established studio or a Mania-style ragtag group of independents, it truly is time for this company to branch out and discover a new way to make Sonic games great again. At the end of the day, Sonic Forces is something that can be learned from. It may not seem like it now, but I believe that it will set yet another example for the series going forward. It's impossible to tell just how long it will take before we see how both Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces influence the series' future. Ideally, both classic and modern Sonic will continue to thrive in tandem with one another as the years go on, with stylish, colorful action and different flavors for each version of the famous blue blur. Whether or not it can truly happen remains to be seen. But here's what I do know. I will never stop loving this character, and I will never stop being excited when a new game in the series is announced. As cynical as the fan base has become, there's a reason so many of us are still here. Sonic as a concept will never stop being appealing, and there will always be people who hold on to hope. It may not last forever, but I look forward to seeing this series through to the very end, and I do sincerely hope that you'll join me.